It's a British literary canon, a leading magazine in toilet humour and stars the likes of Sid the Sexist and the Drunken Bakers.
Of course, it can only be Viz Comic, and it's celebrating its 30th birthday this year. And joining us now is one of the original founders of the comic, Simon Donald. Good afternoon, Simon. Thank you for coming in.
All right.
Now, we have to be very careful with the content here. We don't want to be taken off air, do we? But it was a cultural classic, wasn't it?
It would be great for me if you got taken off air. Think of the publicity.
Well, we're 30 years down the line. I bet you're wondering where those 3 decades have gone, aren't you?
It's funny that you should say that, because for some reason, when it comes to these anniversaries, and it was pointed out to me by a journalist recently, that only certain anniversaries are worth celebrating. 15s don't get done.
No, not often.
But 25 and 30, you're good for. So we had one 5 years ago, the sort of 25th anniversary, and we thought, well, that's a quarter of a century. Where's that gone? But now, for some reason, 1979, when we started off, somehow seems closer than it did 5 years ago. Like I don't know what it is. The memories seem
for some
fresher.
of us, it seems like only yesterday.
But
for some of these people, they weren't born.
some of the time in the in the kind of middle of Viz's life, the sort of late 80s, the very successful times, the times when we were selling crazy amounts of comics, they seem somehow more distant than the.
Really?
I guess it's just the connection to those early days of just going down to the pub and selling them to your friends. And, we just went down to a pub to watch a band play, and that was how it all started, And
you were photocopying somebody's sketches and drawings, and then it was selling out really quickly, and then it was suddenly in an office, and boom, wasn't it?
Well, it did happen quickly, but I mean, it all started on that first night. We did a couple of things. The photocopied things that everyone talks about were actually called the Daily Pie and Arnold the Magazine, and I wasn't actually involved in them. They were done by Chris and a school friend called Jim, who worked on the first issue of Viz with us.
Right. And
the first issue of Viz, I was only 15 years old, and we sold it in a pub.
You can say more, really.
well, the function room of the pub was upstairs, and that was where we sold it. And you could get in through a side door and up the stairs, and there was no bar up there.
Fine.
So I was never ejected.
I think my favourite character was probably Roger Melly, the man on the telly. And there have been so many over the years that it would be wrong to ask you to pick a favourite, but can you pick a favourite?
Well, a character or a particular strip? I mean, for me, character-wise, of all the things I've ever created, it's got to be Sid the Sexist. And the reason for that is because once we came up with the idea, and I sat down to write it, it wrote itself. It was because it was that thing where, the sort of that male chauvinist, it's a very northern thing. I mean, obviously, I'm from Newcastle, and I lived and worked in Newcastle for the first years of my life, and I'll only moved to London in this June.
Well done for holding out that long.
Yeah, well, it was the change of career really that sparked that. But it was when you live and work in Newcastle, the sort of stuff that appeared in the pages of Sid the Sexist was easily found. Put it that way.
Let's talk about the new career. We must talk about that quickly because time's pressing. Stand-up comedy now, and you're gigging in Manchester soon, aren't you? I'm gigging
in. Well, I'm in Crewe tonight, and then I'm in Manchester at the Thirsty Scholar on Sunday night. I've done a lot of gigs in Manchester. There's a great promoter in Manchester called Rob Riley who's given me a lot of work up here. He's been very good to me, and he's been very helpful in launching my stand-up career.
Is it Viz humour that people can expect, or is it Simon with a different angle?
There are obvious connections. I do character stuff. I was actually persuaded by a lot of the acts on the circuit to start doing characters rather than just talking about them. And in November of last year, I actually took to the stage as my characters, and it's just gone from strength to strength. And they're quite similar to similar inspirations to the Viz characters. Put it that way.
Difficult to do on afternoon telly, then, I would imagine, but to be enjoyed by many at the Thirsty Scholar on Sunday night.
Indeed.
Listen, congratulations on the birthday of your creation, and really nice to have met you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, Sam.